have a TV show, a news show, a little bit of comedy. Today won't be too funny, but we talk about legal things and situations people find themselves in, and mistakes they often make. So we have the purpose here of stopping people from making basic fundamental mistakes, like talking too much. Because, like it says in the legal Bible, anything you say or do can and will be used against you in a court of law. Anything can be used. And worse than that, like the Pop Brothers say, and I can't quote them because I don't use the F word on my show very often, but like the Pop Brothers say, just shut the F up. Shut up. Because they talk, and the next thing you know, their cases go down the toilet. Even a good case disappears fast when people talk on their own. And I'll give you an example. Now, it's very important to know that when someone is pulled over in a motor vehicle accident or collision, it's very important to know that they have to give the police officer their registration, and they have to give the police officer a copy of their license. That's the law. But outside of that, they don't have to talk. And it's very important that they call a lawyer right away, because before you know it, the insurance company is getting all these records and they're adding up, and by the time it gets ready to settle, there's 15 or 20 little errors in there that aren't even errors. The problem is they can be construed as errors and they weaken the case. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about reality. I'm talking about body cameras that watch you as you're moving around, gesticulating wildly and complaining about this and complaining about that and standing up for your rights. Well, guess what? All that's on court later, and the person who decides the case says, he wasn't hurt. Look at him standing up for himself. Listen to how loud he's talking. Anyway, this is my great attorney friend named Frank Cirillo Jr.
Hi, I'm Frank Cirillo Jr. This is my friend attorney Pinsky. We're actually competitors with one another. However, we feel that we need to inform the public of important legal concepts that you may not be familiar with. For instance, most people have not interacted with the police of any significance. After an accident, maybe the first time you have dealt with the cops for more than 5 minutes, or in a DARE class when you were a child. It's a stressful event. You've just been injured. There's adrenaline going. You've got the flashing lights. You've got injured people all around. They're asking you questions. Call a lawyer, any lawyer. Why? It's going to calm you down. It's going to be a reassuring voice on the other end of the phone that says, whoa, slow down. What happened? Tell me. Because I found a lot of people get panicked when they just have a collision and will just start talking and talking and talking. And the problem with that is it's oftentimes babble talk. It's not accurate. It's sort of panicked reacting. We don't want that in the law. We want clear, concise answers to questions.
Shut the heck up, because when you talk, you're using legal terms, even though they have multiple meanings, and you don't want to give them multiple meanings. You want to stay with your fundamentals, and you want to call a lawyer right away so they can get a trained investigator. I'm serious, a trained investigator who has a lot of experience, so that they can get pictures at the right angles, so they can get pictures in the right sunlight, so that they can get pictures of things that count to make it a better case, not things that make it a worse case. That's why experience counts. Even lawyers are careful not to go out and take pictures. Sometimes they send investigators because they know a good investigator is better than they are. Truth, MS, true. Okay, now anyway, there's a lot more reasons, but the public has to know that anything they say or do can and will be used against you in a court of law, and they'll minimize the case based on that. They ask you questions, like insurance companies ask you questions and on the phone. And when they're asking you questions on the phone, they're asking questions that have been developed over the last 200, 300 years. Seriously, insurance companies have been in this business for hundreds of years. Now you may say the car is only 100 years old, 150. That's not the point. The point is they had similar laws when they had horse and buggies, when they had trains, when they had potholes on the streets. These laws have been developed by insurance companies to get confusing answers so that the person who actually has a clean case looks like they're confused and they have different stories. So pay attention to what we're saying. Let a professional, let a lawyer do your talking. You don't have to pay them at the beginning of the case. Well, I know Frank does his cases. He gets paid at the end of the cases. I can't say he does that all the time, but I know it's most of the time. And I know I don't charge money up front usually. I keep away from that. If you're hurt in a car accident or a fall down, you can call us and we're not going to charge you. We'll give you, I think it's called a free consultation or something, but we'll tell you whether or not we want the case, whether or not the case is worth pursuing, and if not, we give a lot of free recommendations anyway, because it's in our nature. We give a lot of free recommendations, and that's the way it should be, especially in other states and in New Haven too, Bridgeport. Anyway, Frank, what else you got?
Well, so you may be thinking to yourself, why is it so important to call an attorney after you have an accident? Well, it's important because the people that you're going to be dealing with initially are not thinking about a lawsuit that's coming down the road maybe 2 years later on. They are thinking about what happened, are you okay medically, and getting you to an emergency room. The doctors in the emergency rooms themselves may not take note of the fact that you've been in an accident. It's very important. Everybody that you interact with, you have to let them know how you got hurt, what is bothering you, and it is no time to be bold, as they say, because you don't want to have a record out there saying basically you're fine at the hospital because it was a 4-hour wait and you wanted to go home, when it turns out there was a concussion that you discover the next day. Even if the hospital is a long wait, make sure they document it. Keep telling them you're complaining of these problems and I have not yet been seen. As a sort of corollary to that, if you have access to MyChart, you should routinely check your notes to see what they say. The reason that's so important is if there is an error contained in those notes, it can be fixed early on. So for instance, if a doctor takes down the narrative wrong, meaning how the accident happened or the mechanism of the injury, and you catch it early enough, you can reach out to the doctor or the attorney can and say, hey, I think this is wrong, and it can be fixed.
Or if they leave something out, right? How many times do you see that in your life?
Oh yes, and as humans too, you tend to leave things out when you're in an accident. You're going to the hospital and you're complaining about the big ticket injuries. If you hit your head, that's the thing you're complaining about. The slight low back pain or knee tweak that you have may not even be mentioned. And so that's why it's important that you also don't give any statements to anybody that you don't have to without an attorney being present. In particular, the insurance company. The insurance company, as Attorney Pinsky has said, has refined their art over the last 200 or 300 years from when it started in England. Merchants that would have commercial boats, they had a common fund, and if one went down, it could be used to replace it. It's evolved into one of the biggest businesses in the world.
Huge.
Connecticut is the insurance capital of the world. So we have pretty favorable laws already towards insurance carriers. So if the thumb's already on the scale against you, why make it harder than it has to be? Call a lawyer. It's good.
Frank, what's your number in case somebody wants to call you?
203-787-3558.
And his name is Frank Cirillo. It's the Cirillo Law Firm. Can you spell it?
Cirillo.
And how long have you been around?
So my father, who's also Frank Cirillo, has been practicing since the early 70s. I have been practicing for 7 or 8 years now at this point. So although I haven't been an attorney for as long as Attorney Pinsky, I have been around the practice of law my entire life.
Before I was a lawyer, I went to work at Moss & Cirillo, and your father was like the first person I met in that firm. And he gave me a lot of good advice I still remember all these years later. So it goes. It's a ship. I think the firm is basically 100 years old, but I'm not sure exactly. It's close enough. And they learn cumulatively. They learn every year. They learn new ways to combat the shifting insurance trick questions, because they keep asking questions that are designed to get people talking. And when they get talking, there's bound to be mistakes. You can't talk for 5 minutes, 10 minutes without having some mistakes in there. Also, very important, once they get your phone number and they get the permission to call you, they call your house, and God knows what happens when your kids or your husband or your wife pick up the phone and they start talking, because damn, they say the darndest things right into tape recorders. And you don't even know it's there. And then a year later, the insurance adjuster says, well, listen to this. And, some spiteful house guest said something. So pay attention. Let the lawyer do the talking. Don't let them invade your house.
And this I want to interject with because it's very important, social media. Not just your own social media, but your children's social media. I, as a father of a teenager myself, I am learning how foolish these children are with social media. They are capable of posting absolutely anything to social media. My daughter will take pictures of me while I'm asleep and send it out to God knows whom. Anyone could just see that. So make sure your children are not posting things that they shouldn't be on social media. You would be shocked at the sheer number of kids that I know who have gotten into DUI accidents and have posted on Snapchat images of the overturned vehicle. So don't underestimate
Go ahead, keep
don't
talking.
underestimate the ignorance of children. And by children, I mean anyone under the age of 25, because generationally it is very different in terms of how we communicate. They are more of a Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok generation. And us old timers, and I'm lumping myself in with Attorney Pinsky on this, we just cannot appreciate the life that they live.
And his daughter's an angel, but she's still a daughter, and they run the show.
Yeah, and she's tricky. And she's quite tricky too, you know? But at the same time, these kids are a lot smarter than us in certain respects, but they're also a lot more ignorant than we are in certain respects. And on the social end of things, they just don't get it. They don't understand how their actions can affect others, and they don't think about what they're saying. My daughter, for instance, will consistently just respond to a question I ask her without thinking about it, and then gets upset when I get upset because she hasn't listened to me. Sorry, just so you're.
That's the way children are. That is the way, and that's what they're supposed to do. That's the way they grow. Come on in. Here's my other dog. Come on in. Come on, Luna. Luna's a character. She's a little baffled. Don't worry about it.
So why is it important to not talk, period, to anybody that you don't have to? Even your own insurance company. Your own insurance company may be the bad guy at some point.
Well,
Good. You're making great points. Thank you.
So we'll keep the same title card. That we'll come up with something for how we introduce everyone. But this is like for Snapchat. Let's just
This is working. This is
Yeah,
working.
yeah.
And I'm going to give you his phone number so you can call me so we can work together on a final product.
Stop. You're thinking of posting to Snapchat right now? Don't. Call a lawyer. Have you been to law school? Probably not if you're on Snapchat right now. You need to speak with an attorney before you say something foolish. You may have a case. You may be exposed to criminal liability. You don't know. A lawyer will. Call a lawyer right now.
They say there's more than a 10% chance in any conversation that you misspeak. More than a 10% chance. So if you're talking 10 times on the phone to family and relatives, or talking to the insurance company, and then a different adjuster calls you, and then a different adjuster shows up at your house, then you spoke 10 times, you got mistakes in there. Why bother? If you turn it over to a lawyer, they're not going to bother the lawyer. They're not going to go to the lawyer's house. So you'll get your case developed. You work with the doctors, and also the doctors. Some doctors, I swear, will not help people who are in collisions. They don't want to go to court. They're afraid of court. They're afraid of insurance adjusters. Or they're getting paid by the insurance companies to do certain kinds of exams where they have a good thing going and they don't want to risk it by helping somebody, a regular person. I've seen people who have been going to internists for 30 years in West Haven. I've seen people going for 30 years, and what happened was they ended up getting told by their doctor, I will not see you because I will not do car accidents. I will not do car collisions. But they call me, they go, he won't see me, can I sue him? I go, you can't sue him for that, but you have to get a different doctor. And don't get a doctor who has a big account with the insurance industry. That's my opinion.
And that's very important. A point that you make is you don't know if you just in the blind pick a doctor what their background is. Do they want to go to court? Are they willing to go to court? Going to court is a stressful thing for doctors. So nobody wants to be interrogated by an attorney and have their skills called into question. So certain doctors just won't do it. Also, you don't know the relationship they have with an insurance company. A lot of these doctors could be doing what they call IMEs for these insurance carriers. That's an independent medical exam. It's anything other than independent.
They could be family. Sometimes they're family. Right?
Yes,
I shouldn't cut you off, but I've seen cases where the doctor was related to the adjuster. And they said, "Gee, yeah, I had to help him. He's my cousin. He's my brother's nephew."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And then I just, because of this.
You go right ahead.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
worry about this. I'll shut it off.
Okay.
So,
So,
some sound bites. Go ahead.
all right. So, stop before you post what you're about to post. Remember, this is going to be shown in a court of law someday, and it's going to show you with a selfie and an overturned vehicle. How hurt are you going to look? You may be missing half of your legs right now, but you want to look good for Instagram. Pause and call a lawyer.
And you know where you do look good? On the body cams that the police wear, or on the dash cams when they film you running around the crime scene trying to explain things to everybody like this. And then later when they show it to the insurance adjuster says, "I'm not giving him 10 cents for this case. Look at it. Look at it. All right, I'll give him 10 cents, maybe 11, but that's it. Look at it. He's running around like crazy." And also, how many times in your life have you heard of adjusters say to us, insurance adjusters say, "I'm not paying them money. I'm not paying them money. They didn't go to the emergency room. They weren't hurt. I'm not giving them money. I'll see you in court a million years later." You guys want us to settle cases. You want us to settle cases and not wait for them. So the cases where the insurance adjuster says, "I'm not giving any money if he didn't go to the emergency room," some clients think that they have 24 hours or 48 hours to go to the emergency room. That might be true sometimes, but generally the insurance adjusters say, "It's a small case. The guy didn't even go to the emergency room." Fact. I've heard it 100 times. I don't know if it's true or not. I know people ended up with surgery because they didn't go to the emergency room. I know that. You know that. The point is, I know that it's much, much harder to settle a case where the people don't go to the emergency room. Put your injuries on the record early and talk to a lawyer. Thank you.
And the important part about talking to a lawyer is just to, let me clarify our role here, is to keep the story consistent and narrow and free of extraneous details. We're not trying to write the script, right? We are basically editing down to the salient facts, because people want to talk about things that may not be legally important. It may not matter that you're going to visit Cousin Rose and she had just lost her dog and all these other things. You were stopped at a red light and somebody rear-ended you. Why do we care? Not that we don't care as human beings, but from a legal perspective, it's too much details, and you want to have a clean narrative and not confuse people. And the more information you give that's irrelevant to the actual case, the more likely for errors there are.
I'll give you an example. This shows how pernicious they are. When you tell them where you were going, or you tell them something, then you use the name Aunt Rose or Uncle Teddy. When you do that, then they say, "Well, tell us more about Uncle Teddy." Who would believe it? What's Uncle Teddy got to do with the case? Now he's in the jackpot too. And they give them a whole new line of questioning, a whole new person interview. Keep it simple, stupid. Call a lawyer, because they can go interview my Uncle Teddy all they want, because he's a lawyer and he'll tell them where to go. By the way, I don't have an Uncle Teddy who's a lawyer, but that was too good a line to pass up. Thank you.
The other thing is that the police have body cams on now, and you have to remember that you're always on film when you're interacting with them. I think it should be as a matter of practice, you should treat it like you're on film at all times, because there's cameras out constantly. You don't know who's watching you. Now, you should have an eye towards how bad could this look if I'm saying I have a very bad back. So for instance, should you be out doing trampolining if you're saying your back is so bad you can't go to work? The answer is no.
They can subpoena those things. They can subpoena your IMs and your DMs and your PMs on Facebook and on Instagram. They can subpoena those things. They can subpoena your phone log, who you called and who you didn't call. I've seen these things do it. The key is that when you're by yourself, you set yourself up with a whole bunch of different questions, and they take notes and they tape record them, and then when they look back, they find a million other questions to ask you, and you're in the pit. So do what he said, do what every lawyer says. Hire a lawyer, because anything you say or do can and will be used against you, not just in a court of law, but they will also use it against you oh, there go my dogs. They will also hold it against you in a settlement session. Sometimes we have settlement sessions before we have court cases because we try to settle cases early. And then they pull out all these things that you did and you say, why'd you do this? Well, you didn't have a lawyer. You were talking to us. We had all these rights and you gave us all the clues. So keep it quiet, keep it simple, and get down to business and build your case. That's very important. And one more thing, with my chart, sometimes doctors are in a rush. They can't write everything down. Nurses are in a rush. They can't get everything perfect. Try writing medical notes yourself. You'll say, gee, that was hard. I didn't get it right. That's why sometimes you have to go through the notes and with your lawyer, tailor the answers to the truth. Don't go out there and just take things because they wrote them down wrong in a crunch. Both of us have had plenty of cases where we saw people who said that their back didn't hurt and then ended up with surgery on the back 6 months later, 6 years later, 60 days later, because that's the way it works. The back is tricky. People think they're not hurt, but their muscles are all being pulled in different ways when there's a collision. And sometimes those muscles take years to pull something out of whack, but when it does go, you got to go under the knife. And that can cost you your job, that can cost you your friendships, that can cost you other health problems. Surgery is no joke. That's why pay attention, stick with the fundamentals, keep it simple.
And what's important to remember too is a lot of human communication is non-verbal speech. And if you're giving statements that are being recorded, there's just going to be a transcription in court. They're not going to hear your tone of voice. They're not going to hear if you're panicked, if you're nervous, if you sound like, you're forgetful or you're making something up or you're honest. They're just going to get a cold read in court and it's going to say, I hurt my neck. And then if it turns out you had middle back problems as well, even though it's pretty close, medically speaking to one another, it's not going to sound so good in front of a jury who's not going to necessarily be as educated and as experienced with this as attorneys and doctors are. We do our best as lawyers to educate the jury. That's a big part of our job, is to bring the right experts in that they could explain to the jury how you got injured and what the injuries are. But if you don't have a lawyer involved early on, you can potentially get off track.
And when you don't have a lawyer for 5 months or 6 months, hope you didn't miss any 30-day notices or 60-day notices, because there's all these notices you have to give out within a certain period of time, not just a year, 2 years, 5 years. There's things you have to give out in 60 days or 90 days, like jam shop or city notices or medical benefits. And every state's different. Like New Jersey, you have to do things in 30 days. And in other states, it's 50 days. You have to be careful. All these stupid little tricks that will ruin parts of your life. So pay attention. And I'm going to take a break now just to make sure. Can you shut it off?
The less serious the accident, the sloppier they are.
So have you come across police reports
every day
that were just totally
completely wrong, backwards parties, But I mean, they use template documents. Oh, maybe that's an important thing to record here. Is this going as we're talking? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Something to remember is police officers are no different than you and I. In my office, we use templates for almost everything that we do. They do too. And oftentimes, they will mix up the parties or the streets, or sometimes they keep irrelevant information from the old template. It's very important that you review the police report once it becomes available, so if there are any errors, they can be corrected. It's a common misconception that the police and attorneys have a poor working relationship with one another. For the most part, our working relationship is cordial. It's only in those instances that you see on the news where it's contentious. And although that's what gets the most publicity, that's about 0.1% of the actual interactions with officers. Most of the time, they're asking questions through us, just trying to get information that's relevant to the case. About it makes us a valuable resource for you because you're emotionally invested. Even if the cop is not looking to antagonize you, by the way that the question is phrased, you might get hot, thinking that there's an accusation that you've done something wrong, when the reality is they just want clarification. And the more that you have explosions sort of with law enforcement and adjusters and things of that nature, the more likely it is that there's going to be a poorly written report out there for you. That's what we need to avoid.
So it's best to just be polite and professional when the police are pulling
Yes.
you over, and just be as
Yes.
calm as you possibly can.
That's the best advice I've heard from anyone, is if you're being pulled over by the police, be as calm and as professional as you possibly can. Pretend that you're in a court of law. I don't care how stressful the situation is. The officer wants to be your friend, I promise you. These guys, guys and gals, all went into it wanting to help folks. They didn't want to, do wrong. They're looking to be your friend. And you make it more likely that they're going to be helpful if you can remain calm and respectful throughout the process. If you get hot and bothered and start yelling, it's going to make it far more likely that the officer will write up the police report unfavorably for you.
Sounds like common sense to me.
Yes, and common sense is uncommon. Now, the last thing that I have is for parents and children alike, and it's something that I didn't realize until just recently. They don't teach basic American civics until about 11th grade in this country. So that means our children have no idea, and you may be watching this on Snapchat, you may have no idea what your rights are. My daughter, the daughter of an attorney, does not know she has the right to remain silent if she's questioned by a police officer. What? Like, how many TV shows are there Miranda warnings? We forget sometimes as older folks, TV shows aren't their preferred method of consuming entertainment. These procedural shows that we had, your Law and Orders and the such, that gave us a basic background into the law, these children just don't know about. They're unaware of entirely. I grew up with the O.J. Simpson trial. There hasn't been the Donald Trump trial that probably no one watched, but beyond that, there hasn't been any sensational, we gotta watch this, since that gal drowned her kid down in Florida, Casey Anthony. And remember that your children may not know their basic rights. And as they start turning 16, it's time to talk to them about what they should and shouldn't do if they find themselves in an accident. And what they should and shouldn't do if they find themselves interacting with the police.
That's a good idea, and I appreciate every word you said. That's very useful for the future. We'll do a show on that. Thank you very much. Anything else?
The overarching message is call a lawyer. It doesn't have to be one of the two of us. Again, we're competitors. We just want to make sure that you are protected. That's our job. And whether it's through us or through another attorney, we want to see you get the help you deserve.
Full compensation for real injuries. Thank you.
Okay, Attorney Cirillo, what is you have a name, your telephone number? I apologize. Telephone number and a website by any chance, or email?
So I can do all that. So I am Frank Cirillo Jr. Our telephone number is 203-787-3558. My email address is attycirillo@gmail.com. So that's atty, my last name, @gmail.com.
And how about you, Attorney Pinsky?
Or you can get me irvingpinsky@gmail.com, or you can call me at 203-ATTORNE, leave the Y off, or 1-800-YES-FOR-LAW. You can just Google me and call me on the number there. I'm everywhere. Thank you very much.